Hello, this is JQ, and welcome to Noob Bridge, where we'll cross the river from noobdom to competence, one video at a time. Today, we're continuing the Pokemon sub-series of Noob Bridge, picking up after last time where I went over the different type matchups. This time, we're talking stats. These right here. In addition to describing the roles of each, I'll also talk about raising them, including going over some mid-level topics that could be very useful to have in the back pocket for later, like those EV things you may have heard of that aren't the Pokemon. All that said, let's begin. The first stat we'll go over is HP. Short for hit points, this is your Pokemon's health. If it hits 0, they're knocked out and can't battle anymore. If all of your Pokemon are knocked out, you lose. If all of the opponents are knocked out, you win. In most situations during single-player play, getting all of your Pokemon knocked out will cause you to drop some money and be sent back to the nearest or last used Pokemon Center, or possibly your home if you haven't made it that far yet. Before we get into the attacking and defending stats, a quick aside. In the first 3 generations, a type being physical or special was determined by what type the move was, as opposed to the nature of the move. Physical types were normal, fighting, poison, ground, flying, bug, rock, ghost, and steel. Meanwhile, the special types were fire, water, electric, grass, ice, psychic, dragon, and dark. In all future games, however, starting from the 4th generation, each attack being physical or special was based off of the nature of the move itself. For example, Fire Punch was special in the first 3 generations because it's a fire-type move, but in all other games it's physical because, well, it's a punch. You'll know an attack is physical in the 4th gen and later games if it has this symbol next to it. All that said, let's move on and talk about the attack stat. This determines how much damage you'll deal with physical attacks, like punches, kicks, throwing rocks, that sort of thing. Typically, this damage is mitigated by the target's defense stat. Special attack, meanwhile, dictates the damage dealt by special attacks like beams, water blasts, thunderbolts, and similar. A special attack can be ID'd by looking for this symbol instead, and is typically mitigated by the opponent's special defense as opposed to their regular defense. Finally, we'll talk about speed. It's pretty straightforward. Whoever's faster usually goes first in a turn. This means even if the opponent can defeat you should they land a blow, the faster Pokemon has a chance to knock out the opponent first by striking before they themselves get attacked. There are attacks that upset this natural order, usually noted by texts like, "This attack always goes first," or something to that effect. Actually, I lied. There are 2 more somewhat pseudo stats, those being accuracy and evasiveness. Unless someone's action interacts with them, you won't see them show up in a battle, and the accuracy of moves used will be what's shown on their info screen. However, if the opponent uses something like Sand Attack or Kinesis, your attacks won't hit as often because of the hit to your accuracy. There are also some moves that you can use to increase your accuracy, such as Coil, which has increasing accuracy as one of its effects, or ones that can make the next move bypass accuracy checks entirely to always hit, as long as the opponent isn't immune or otherwise protected, such as Lock On. Evasiveness acts like a defense to accuracy, where an increase in evasiveness from a move like Double Team will make attacks harder to land, and lowered evasiveness, such as being hit by the effect of Sweet Scent, will allow attacks to hit you more often than usual. Each Pokemon has innate aptitudes for different stats. These are fixed and cannot be changed as they are programmed on a species-to-species basis. For example, Chansey is known to have incredibly high HP and pretty good special defense, while having poor stats and everything else. These aptitudes are referred to in the community as base stats. Going into too much detail about them is past the scope of what a new player needs to know, but it could be good to think about for later. There are more actionable ways you can increase your Pokemon's stats, however. First of all, leveling up usually increases 1 or more stats by a little bit up until they reach level 100 where they can't level up anymore. Another way is through evolution. Most Pokemon, but not all, can be evolved into a different, more advanced form. This typically corresponds with an increase in their base stats, usually becoming better at their strong points while not gaining quite as much in their weak areas. How one evolves a Pokemon can vary, from leveling up, to using an item, or through trading with someone else. There's also myriad other obscure methods, but these are the usual ones and probably enough to start with. There are natures to consider, shown here. In each game, they have different effects on how a Pokemon's stats grow. Excluding the 5 neutral natures, which don't affect stats at all, each one will increase the growth of one stat by 10%, while lowering the growth of another by 10%. For example, the Adamant nature will make the Pokemon's attack 10% higher, but special attack will be 10% lower. Controlling natures through different in-game mechanics like special catch-related functions or breeding are some of the older methods, but those are more complicated than this video is designed for. Luckily, nowadays there are mints which will instantly change your Pokemon's nature. Also, notably, none of the natures interact with HP growth at all, only the attacking and defending stats and speed. Past those methods though, you can also increase your Pokemon's EVs, or effort values as the community calls them. These are gained usually by fighting different Pokemon, as each Pokemon species has a different stat they give EVs for, and a different amount they give as well. It's a bit of a slog to purposefully try to build up EVs, and you won't see the full fruits of your labors until level 100, and there is a maximum amount to EVs that can be given to a specific Pokemon, but those are all more advanced topics covered better by other more specialized guides. Just know that EVs are a way that even the same Pokemon can perform a bit differently depending on who's using it and how it's raised. For an easier way to increase EVs, you can always hit up the local drugstore and buy different vitamin supplements, which will instantly add EVs to a specific stat. Some games also have things like feathers, or, in the case of the DLC for Scarlet and Violet, there's also Mochi that have the same effect. Next up, we have IVs. No, not the thing you get stuck in your arm, but a number between 0 and 31 that is added to each of the 6 basic stats when an individual Pokemon is generated. Note that these numbers are an increase in how high the stat will be at level 100, and you won't necessarily see a direct change right away when you capture the Pokemon or otherwise obtain it. They usually can't be changed, but some advanced methods exist to increase or decrease them in later games, typically by way of giving a special NPC a bottle cap item. Finally, there are AVs, or what are called awakening values. Exclusive to the Let's Go games, these are earned by feeding your Pokemon candies, either the general kinds that work on a single stat, or their species lines candies which give them a whole stat point in each, right there, up to a maximum of 200. Notably, these are added on separately to the other things, and thus your Pokemon can have stats much higher during solo play in those games than they'd ever be able to have in any other game. Hopefully this overview was helpful to get you started on what each stat is for and how raising them works. I believe with these tips, along with the previous ones in mind, you should be in a pretty good spot to start a Pokemon journey. Notably though, I did not talk about abilities because of the scope that would entail, but just know that in every game from Generation 3 onward, each Pokemon has some passive trait that will give them either an advantage or disadvantage in various ways. Pay attention during battles if you see something not working the way you expect it to. Anyway, that's it for the Pokemon set of Noob Bridge videos for now. I haven't decided what the next topic will be just yet, but keep an eye out. Until next time, keep walking, keep playing, and we'll cross the Noob Bridge together. See you next time.